En este video aprenderás inglés con una historia de terror y misterio. Espero que la disfrutes y nos dejes un gran like.
The Ghost on the Road. One dark night, a young man named Jake was driving home after a long day at work. The clock on the dashboard showed it was nearly midnight. The road was empty, and the only sound was the gentle hum of his car. As he drove, he felt a strange chill in the air, but he brushed it off. Suddenly, he spotted a figure by the side of the road. It was a woman dressed in a flowing white dress, her hair long and tangled. She looked lost and frightened. Jake's heart raced as he slowed down. "Do you need help?" he asked, rolling down his window. The woman turned to him, her face pale and her eyes wide with fear. "I need to get home," she whispered. Her voice was soft, almost like a breeze. Feeling a mix of concern and curiosity, Jake replied, "Get in." The woman hesitated for a moment, but then opened the door and sat in the passenger seat. As he started to drive, he glanced at her. She seemed distant, as if she were staring through the window at something only she could see. "Where do you live?" he asked, trying to make conversation. The woman pointed down a narrow path that led into the dark woods. "Take me there," she said quietly. The trees loomed overhead, their branches like twisted fingers reaching for the sky. Jake felt uneasy, but didn't want to leave her alone. "Are you sure this is the right way?" he asked, glancing at her. "Yes," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Just a little further." After a few minutes, the atmosphere in the car grew heavy. The air felt cold, and Jake could see his breath misting in front of him. Suddenly, the woman's expression changed. She looked out the window, her eyes wide with panic. "Stop!" she cried. Jake slammed on the brakes, his heart racing. "What's wrong?" he asked, looking around. The road was quiet, but the woods felt alive, watching them. "My house is down that path," she said, pointing again. But when Jake looked, he saw nothing but darkness. He turned back to her, ready to ask more questions, but to his shock, the seat beside him was empty. The woman had vanished. Terrified, Jake sat frozen in his car. The cold air wrapped around him, and he could still feel her presence. A whisper broke the silence. "Help me." It was faint, like the wind carrying a secret. Shaking with fear, Jake decided he had to leave. He drove away quickly, glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see her standing there. But the road was empty. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing heart. A few days later, still haunted by the encounter, Jake told his friends about the ghost he had picked up. They laughed at him, teasing him about his wild imagination. But deep down, he could feel the truth of his experience. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had to go back. That Saturday night, he returned to the road. The moon hung high in the sky, casting an eerie glow. He drove slowly, hoping to see the woman again. As he approached the spot where he first found her, he saw the sign that read, "Beware, Ghost Road." It sent chills down his spine. Determined, he stopped the car and got out. The air was thick with silence. He called out, "Are you here? I want to help you." His voice echoed in the stillness. Just then, he felt a cold breeze rush past him. The trees whispered softly, and he saw a faint light flicker deeper in the woods. Heart-pounding, he followed it. As he walked, the whisper grew louder, calling his name. "Jake, help me!" He stumbled through the underbrush until he reached a clearing. There, he saw a small old house covered in vines. It looked abandoned, but the light shone brightly from one of the windows. He approached cautiously, feeling a strange pull. When he reached the door, it creaked open as if inviting him inside. Taking a deep breath, he stepped into the house. The air was thick with dust, but the light illuminated a small room. In the center stood an old mirror, and as he looked into it, he gasped. In the reflection, he saw the woman standing behind him, her expression filled with sadness. "Please help me," she pleaded. "I am trapped here." Jake's heart ached for her. "How can I help you?" he asked, desperate to save her. She pointed to the mirror. "You must break it. Only then will I be free." With trembling hands, he picked up a heavy object from the floor. As he turned to the mirror, the woman's image shimmered, her eyes filled with hope. "Thank you," she whispered. Jake swung the object at the mirror with all his strength. The glass shattered, and a blinding light filled the room. He felt a rush of wind, and then everything went dark. When Jake woke up, he was back in his car, parked by the side of the road. The night was calm, and the stars twinkled above him. He looked around, heart racing, but the woman was gone. As he drove home, he felt a weight lift from his heart. He knew he had set her free. From that day on, he never drove that road again, but sometimes, on quiet nights, he could still hear her whisper in the wind, thanking him for his kindness. And he smiled, knowing he had made a difference. Revise el link para más información sobre clases y libros. Muchas gracias por vernos.